Edgecumbe residents were not sufficiently aware of the flood risk and there were no evacuation plans in place before the town was flooded in April. That's according to an independent report into the catastrophic failure of Edgecumbe's stop bank released this afternoon. 15 homes were destroyed in the flood, a further 250 were extensively damaged. The review, led by Sir Michael Cullen, who we spoke to earlier in the program, was commissioned by the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. The council's chairman, Doug Leeder, joins us now on the phone. Doug, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. Did the council, and in fact, long before your time, a series of regional councils let Edgecumbe down?
Look, I think there's some lessons that we've all learnt out of this review. I think in terms of the awareness to the community about what was the flood risk and where were the trigger levels in terms of the evacuation, we take that on board, but there were some trigger levels. Those levels, with the benefit of hindsight, were set way too high. So going forward, we have to approach the management of risk and the potential for evacuation of a lot more conservative manner. Now, having said that, the flood that occurred on the 7th of April was well within the confines of the design stop bank at 100 years. They was operating at about 70-year event. However, the event in 2004, the event in 2017 and other smaller freshers have clearly highlighted to Regional Council and to the community that the underlying geology on which these flood banks have been built is inadequate to serve the purpose for what they are now.
And you need replacement flood banks and you need replacement spillways, right? And the point Sir Michael Cullen makes is the fact remains the completion of Reed's floodway and spillway is still some way off. In other words, the problem that led to this event, no, actually Sir Michael Cullen doesn't say that, but he says exacerbated or increased or heightened the impact, has still not been resolved.
And they're fair comments, and again, we take those on as board as well. But the original spillway that was still in place in 2017 was designed back in the 60s. After the event and the flood event, which was again a piping or a breach on the eastern side of that stop bank, the Regional Council of the day went ahead and commissioned some work to improve the spillway and what we referred to as Reed Central Canal, which is an exit strategy for the floodwaters. However, during the course of the deliberations around when that was to be done, it was discovered that the advice the Regional Council had received, and this was confirmed by the panel's deliberations, wasn't adequate or wasn't sufficient to address the issues that we are now discussing. So even if we had done the work, it was the panel's view that the most likely that breach would have occurred anyway. So we're between a rock and a hard place here. If we'd done the work, we would have been criticised. We haven't done the work because we're looking for a much better solution. What we have to do now is accelerate that solution, which is not going to be easy. It's going to require extensive consultation.
Yes, and I absolutely want to pick that point up here because you have to accelerate the solution and it is going to be expensive. And so Michael Cullen, I think everyone knows now that the sort of flood events that used to happen very rarely are going to happen increasingly often. And this is a big picture question and I wonder if you can address it. Can regional councils, especially those with relatively small population bases to get rates from, afford to do the work that is required throughout New Zealand?
That's going to be a discussion that we have to have with multiple parties. So we've got to have it with
Can you answer the question though? Can you afford to do the work that's required?
In terms of continuing to build the historical manner in which we have built stop banks, the answer to that is no.
And so the government has to step up, right?
Well, we need to have discussions with all parties involved in this because the methodology that was used in the 60s in terms of building these flood protection systems has in recent years been questioned. It's proved to be inadequate in terms of the cost and the geology. So we now have to approach flood management control system, a much wider floodplain with much lower banking systems. Consequently, the banking systems will be cheaper, but we've got what we've got. In order to transition to something more appropriate, it's going to take a while, it's going to take a lot of money, it's going to take a lot of understanding from the communities, but it's a journey we've got to go on.
Yes, certainly. It's the Bay of Plenty Regional Council Chairman Doug Leeder joining us now live, and that is a big picture end for communities at risk of flooding, and they will increase in number throughout New Zealand.